Hello, my name is Nicole Priest, and I'm a special education teacher in a self-contained autism and intellectual disabilities classroom, and this is my Morningside College presentation titled Communication Boards and Individualized Literacy Instruction Impacts on Achievement of Students with Significant Disabilities and Communication Impairments. The problem that I address through my research is students with significant disabilities and communication impairments are struggling in the area of literacy. Lighton McNaughton, 2012, stated that many students with autism and Down syndrome are not developing key literacy skills due to communication impairments. And some of the main areas that they're struggling are with foundational literacy skills such as letter names, letter sounds, sight words, as well as comprehension. The reason I chose to study this problem is I see my students struggling every day in the area of communication. They get frustrated when they cannot participate in different literacy activities due to the struggles that they have to communicate. So I saw this as a problem in my classroom, so I wanted to research an area that I feel would help me grow as an educator, but would also help my students with each of their individual literacy and communication needs. The literature reviews some of the past literacy interventions that were studied is the use of augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. This is the use of different communication devices to support these struggling learners, and there were some positives that came from Lighton McNaughton 2012's study of decreasing challenging behaviors, an increase in requesting and expressive vocabulary. But there were also some challenges that we face when getting access to AAC to these learners. So there's a wide range of communication needs, as well as a diverse population of communicators. So that means that it's not a one device fit all. There's a device, but it might not be effective for the learner. It might not help them or support them in their academic needs. So that's really one of the huge challenges we have today in special education and meeting the needs of these diverse communicators and learners. NARI in 2010 did a case study which followed a first grade boy named Trevor around, and they interviewed parents and teachers, and they took observational notes from him using his device throughout the day. And the overall finding was that his device was not providing effective communication for him, and it was not supporting him or helping promote his literacy skills in the classroom. Another area of past literacy interventions are individualized literacy interventions. Bailey, Engel, and Stoner, 2011, implemented an individualized literacy intervention for 4 students with significant disabilities. These focused on phoneme-loaded lessons and individualized phoneme lessons. And while some of the students did make impacts, the overall argument was that communication impairments make attaining literacy skills more complicated, and these skills are crucial in order to help these students be more successful in the future. So where the gap in the research lies is really there's research on how to support students with significant disabilities in different academic areas, but there's not really strategies or interventions to support our students with significant disabilities and communication impairments, which is a huge population of our special education students. More importantly, there's a lack in how to support them in literacy instruction. So overall, there's little to no research on literacy interventions for elementary students with significant disabilities, as well as communication impairments. And these students truly deserve to have these interventions and strategies to help them grow their language and literacy skills in the classroom. I ended up linking Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory with my research. His theory truly embodies special education in general. If you look at the visual on here, behavior, personal factors, and environmental influences are all something that impacts our diverse learners every day. And Ann and Meany, 2015, also wrote that the social cognitive theory really focuses on individual learners and their needs, and that's truly what I was focusing on in my study, was how to support these individual learners in their literacy skills. The purpose statement of my research was to study the impact of individualized literacy interventions with an emphasis on increasing communication in a classroom of students with significant disability. My research kind of had two different interventions, so there were two separate research questions. One was, how will the implementation of comprehension boards affect the number of words students with significant disabilities and communication impairments use during literacy activities? And then the second piece was, how will individualized literacy routines impact the literacy skills of students with significant disabilities and communication impairments? And I truly believe that my research has the potential to impact the field of special education. It seems there's a lack of research for these students with significant disabilities and communication needs, and this research has the potential to support different educators who have students who are similar to mine. And this research has truly impacted the way that I view my classroom. It's made me think more in depth about problems that my students are facing, and the research process has truly helped me problem solve and create individualized interventions to support my students in their academic needs. The methods section, I used a qualitative case study design for my research, and this is kind of an overview of the individual participants, but I'll give you an overview of them as a group. So there were 4 students with significant disabilities. They all had the diagnosis of autism. Each participant had a significant disability along with a communication impairment. Their ages ranged from 5 to 7. 50% were females, 50% were males. 100% of the participants were African Americans. 100% were on free and reduced lunch. Each participant did have an IEP, and they received all of their academic instruction in the special education classroom, but they did participate in specials and lunch with general education peers. The materials that I used in the study were 3 types of data sheets. There was a letter names data sheet, a kindergarten sight word data sheet, and a first grade sight word data sheet. The comprehension boards, paper and pencil were used to take observational notes and record data. An iPad was used for a communication app and video modeling. Different letter name and sight word manipulatives and flashcards were used. And technology such as a computer, interactive smartboard, and the board maker software was also used. So this is the first of the interventions. So the individualized literacy intervention focused on increasing the number of sight words and letter names that students were using, and depending on where they were academically, they would either get the letter names or the sight word intervention. So I took 2 weeks of baseline data. This was no interventions in place, just to see where the participants were before any of the interventions. And then the interventions that were put in place were matching sight word to sight word. We made up actions for the sight words. I would set out 3 sight words or letter names, and they would have to choose the right one. And then we watched various YouTube videos of the sight words or letter names to just become more familiar with them. And then every Friday, I collected data during our reading center time. And I was also taking observational notes, focusing on the student behavior, participation, where the interventions seeming to work. And so I recorded the number of sight words or letter names correct, and then they were ended up graphed. And so I compared the baseline data to the intervention data. And the second piece of the intervention was the comprehension boards. So there were 2 different kinds of comprehension boards used for the students. So the top one was a paper copy, which 2 participants used. They were a little bit more verbal. And then the bottom one is on the iPad for my nonverbal students to use. There were also different level of text used. 2 of the students used a level A text and 2 of them used a level C text, really still focusing on that individualized, where are they at academically. I did a video model of myself using both of these so that they could become more familiar and know how to navigate and use the comprehension boards. And also I took the 2 weeks of baseline data with no interventions in place, and then 6 weeks of them being able to use the comprehension board, and all of that data was then compared. Trustworthiness, credibility was established, because while there were different participants working on a variety of different interventions, they remain the same for each participant, so they're all focusing on those same interventions. The data sheets and the progress monitoring remained the same for them all, and all of the interventions were given in the same classroom at the same time during our reading centers. Transferability was established because there was a smaller sample size that we collected the data from. Dependability was established because example of the data sheets and example of the comprehension boards were located in the appendix, and confirmability was established because when I was going through the data, I pulled in some other professionals, the autism strategist for my district and the special education consultant helped me go through the data and make sure that I was analyzing it and everything kind of added up and made sense. The data analysis piece, there's 3 types of data sheets and observational notes that I use to analyze my data. I use the grounded theory analysis to go through the observational notes as well as code books, and it took me more time because I had to analyze 2 separate interventions. The individualized literacy intervention code book, I just kind of put the example to go through like the main themes that I use, which were student engagement, teacher prompts, how the students viewed themselves in the strategies and interventions. And then I have the comprehension boards code book where I focus on student behaviors, teacher prompts, individual student characteristics, and support for my students. Here is the results of the individualized literacy intervention results. As you can see, participants 1, 3, and 4 used the sight words, and participant 2 used the number of uppercase letters. The overall results from this study were that each participant did make progress throughout the intervention period. Half of the participants used the strategies that were provided by the researcher to help them remember the words, and 75% of them increased their attention and confidence throughout the intervention. Here are the comprehension board intervention results. So the main focus of this was the number of words that participants were able to use during a literacy activity. The overall findings were that all the participants increased the number of words they could tell about a text. All of the participants were more engaged in reading activities, as well as they could better participate with the comprehension boards. 75% of them increased their confidence, and the video modeling provided by the researcher was very engaging for them. The interpretations is that all of the participants benefited from the individualized, repetitive, and routine-based literacy instruction. The comprehension boards provided a visual support that helped increase the number of words that they were able to use and gave them the opportunity to use words during their literacy instruction that they weren't able to do before. And the technology, the video modeling, the iPad, and the communication apps were all very motivating, engaging, while also providing literacy support for these students. The implications from the study are that we need to understand that these students with communication impairments and significant disabilities deserve these individualized strategies to help them attain these literacy skills and make growth in the area of literacy. I think we also need to understand that technology can provide literacy support, so we need to make sure that it's accessible for these students as well as can support them throughout their literacy instruction and honestly all academic areas, in just creating and implementing the individualized strategies for these students. The limitations of the study were that there was a smaller sample size, only the 4 students, and while they all did have the diagnosis of autism, it's not representative of all students with autism. Also, researcher preference, the participants were familiar with the researcher, so that could have impacted their responses versus a totally random person coming in and doing this study with them. So the overall recommendations I have from the study are that we need to investigate techniques to support students with language impairments and significant disabilities in all academic areas, not just the area of literacy. We need to design strategies and interventions to provide for these teachers and students, and we need to develop resources or technology to increase communication of students with significant disabilities and communication impairments. I truly believe that these students and teachers deserve these different supports and resources, and this study just shows how effective that these can be for them. Thank you for watching.